but I would like to begin with the football of it all, if that's okay with y'all, because just a couple games, obviously. Let's start with the Big Ten championship, because those are two teams exchanging absolute haymakers. You felt like Oregon got the absolute perfect start. You were looking at the opportunity for them to just sort of run away, but incredible resilience from Penn State early. Great way to bounce back. Tom, what'd you make of what you saw?
You get rid of divisions, and immediately the Big Ten title game features 82 points. And it's
You've been really hung up on these Big Ten point totals.
I'm just saying, it's been a high-scoring league all season, and they never really caught on to it. But no, that was, I mean, I think Oregon obviously solidifying itself as the number 1 seed. They were the best team in the Big Ten all year long. They finished it off. But, like, if you're Penn State, obviously you're upset you lost that game. But, like, that felt very different. Like, when you think of Penn State coming up short against Ohio State, even when they keep it close, you're watching those games and you're like, they never really had a chance. Penn State had 518 yards of offense in this game. They ran for nearly 300 yards on this Oregon defense. They were very much in it. And if not for a couple of turnovers, they very well might have won it. So it's odd, but, like, I feel a little worse about Oregon, even though they won. And I feel a little better about Penn State going forward in the playoff after this. It's just, I think they might be able to win a game or two based on what I saw tonight.
Two really good football teams, right?
Yeah.
Like, really good. Maybe not national championship caliber from prior years, but, like, I think really good football teams that you can't tell me that Oregon can't win the whole thing. And I really don't think you can tell me that Penn State can't, if they get hot, win the whole thing. And that's kind of a crazy thing to say, because I think in other years, this Oregon team would be like a 4 or 5 seed. Okay. And I think this Penn State team would not be in the consideration really for a college football playoff bid back in the 14. But ultimately, because there's no great teams this year, I mean, like that Oregon defense was concerning. That Penn State defense to me was also concerning. Oregon found guys open on critical down and distance repeatedly. And some of it was RPO stuff, but some of it was just, Penn State couldn't hang with that Oregon speed there in the back end. And we had discussed that some, I think, in the preseason with this Penn State defense. Like, they had lost a lot of important pieces to the NFL. They had some guys also go down with injury in spring camp and also early in the season. And we talked about this with the Ohio State loss to Oregon. When Oregon's right, when Tez is healthy, and when Stewart is really playing and balling, I mean, they're throwing 2 touchdown passes to Kenyon Sadiq there in the red zone, which was a cool answer. But ultimately, like, they have a lot of speed to hang with, man. I don't think there is a better. I want to make just kind of run through my head real fast. Tom, Chip, like, there's no better receiving core in this college football playoff, right?
Than Oregon? I don't think so.
Healthy?
So, like, that's a scary unit to face, for sure. Oregon's defense, a little concerning. Penn State, like, Cuddle Nicky kind of had them in knots for a lot of the night. Now, I was pretty impressed by the job they did.
What about the did Penn State answer? I mean, obviously some of that stuff was schemed up, but did Penn State answer some of those concerns offensively about that you had coming into it in terms of their explosiveness and the ability for other playmakers to step up?
Yeah. I mean, there's still the fact that at the receiver position, they're not there. Like, Harrison Wallace had a good game tonight. He had the 4 catches for the 59 yards. Perfectly nice game. But the most of the receiving damage was done with Tyler Warren, who had 7 catches for 84, Nick Singleton, and then Katron Allen had 3 for 15. So it was like their tight end and their running backs really still were the passing game for them. So I think that problem still exists, but they did do a good job of getting it big plays. They had a lot of big chunk yardage runs on the ground. Drew Aller had a couple of them late too, which kind of skews it a little bit, but still they were able to get those kind of plays for the most part. And I think that, like, defensively, Tez Johnson had 11 catches for 181 yards.
Yeah.
And I mentioned on our show yesterday in Indianapolis, I was wondering if they might try to consider moving A.J. Harris into the slot to take away Tez Johnson. They left him on the outside and Evan Stewart. How many catches did Evan Stewart have tonight?
None.
Not a damn one.
Yeah, no, 0.
So, like, A.J. Harris completely took Stewart out of the game, but they took advantage of Tez Johnson. And I think, like, I think Will Stein did a very good job of I almost said word. I think he did a very good job of formation screwing Penn State a lot by the way he was doing things, because he was making, like, when Penn State was in man coverage, they were getting linebackers out in space where they're not really comfortable being, but they were also like vacating the middle of the field. So like they were forcing Penn State to declare itself before the snap with their formations. Dylan Gabriel was able to see if the blitz was coming and can figure it out where it was coming from. And the middle of the field was just wide open for all these slants. This has Johnson, who's then catching the ball in space with room to run. And he was very much taking advantage of that. I think that Oregon did a fantastic job with that all night and getting big chunk yardage with it. But I will also say, as I texted you guys, I love Tez Johnson. Very good player, very talented. Don't run out of bounds so easily. When there's still an extra 3 or 4 yards to get, don't just step out of bounds.
Well, when you first texted it after he sat down, like he caught me. Sometimes I just think that the little man, he's not little. He's a tall, sizable. You know, he's at 6'1", 6'2". He's not taller than 6'2".
Skinny.
Yeah, he's skinny. Yeah, listen. Sometimes his feet get moving too fast. All right, you know. So he just. Oh, whoa! You got to sit down. Hey, there's a slick field out there. You know, indoor track, Lucas Oil Stadium. There had to have been some very nervy moments for that Oregon staff, for those Oregon coaches, and maybe even those Oregon players, because all of the any lingering nightmares of all the times that this program has come so close but fallen short, like the Pac-12 title game last year, when you're just making that charge late into the game after you let it get away early and you can't get that last score. We had referenced leading into the game what happened in Seattle, and oh no, we're going to stick to our plan. We're going for it on 4th down. But this was a time where even if not everything went right, and you are 100% right, that defense had some breakdowns, you convert on the throw to Ferguson. You convert on the 3rd down that you needed to be able to ice the game away. You get the interception to be able to really flip this thing at the end. I felt that even though everything didn't go correctly, this Oregon program has been snake bitten. I even at one time, maybe it was like 6-7 weeks ago, talked about them being almost like a lovable loser in the modern era. You're like always playing the opposite part of the superhero. But there's only one team that has a 0 in the loss column. We almost had none going into the postseason, something that hasn't happened since 2003. But sure enough, it is the Oregon Ducks. So I sometimes with really, really good teams, that last step can be so hard to finish the job. Fair to have concerns and criticisms. I never thought Oregon was bulletproof heading into this playoff. I'm kind of hitting a reset on a lot of these teams, just the same way that they're going to be able to hit a little bit of a reset, get a little healthy, do more self-scouting. But to me, the fact that this did not break with a collapse, I think was a really good thing just overall for like the psyche of Oregon as the number 1 seed here.
100%. I thought, like, specifically to Tom's point, the same side motion that Oregon did a lot. Like, they were not bringing a guy across the formation. They were basically moving, from one type of trips to another, where you would take the slot and then all of a sudden he would motion out, to be your X, and then so you kind of reestablish who the slot was. That gave Penn State fits, and I'm curious to go back and kind of rewatch why that worked. But like there wasn't a whole lot of like across the formation stuff I thought that was killing them. So that was kind of the last thing I had to say about what Tom was saying, which I thought he just nailed it. But the same side stuff for UFR on Monday, if we do it, that'll be something to go back, kind of like see why it worked.
Yeah.
I would think for like the Oregon defense, like Matt, like we saw it in the Boise game earlier this year. Ashton Jennings ran all over their ass too. Like this has been something teams have been able to do. Like if you have the right backs for it and a good offensive line, you can move the ball on this team on the ground. And I was sitting there thinking too, because I'm sure we'll get to it here soon, but it's like this was a huge game for Oregon to win simply because had they lost, they'd have fallen to the 5 seed. You know who they're probably playing as a 12?
Arizona State and Cam Scatteraboo.
Yeah, that's not really a good matchup, I think, for what I've seen from Oregon based on when they like games like this. If Penn State was able to move the ball like this, give Cam Scatteraboo, he might have had a big game. So that would have been an interesting thing to see had they lost. But of course they didn't. And I mean, like that was a very fun football game. And I gotta say, like the ACC game was great at the end. But we talked about all week about how close these spreads were for these games. by and large, the games this weekend were not exactly great.
I mean,
the last 8 hours of ball were awesome.
Yes.
The first 12 hours of ball, counting last night, were not the best.
Oh, if we stretch it into Friday night too, and
Yeah.
count
Like
that,
if we had 20 hours of ball, first 12, kind of sucked. Last 8 were pretty solid.
yeah, that like basically, if you started championship weekend, chapter 2 with the start of the SEC championship game, or maybe let's say if you started it with the second half of the SEC championship game, it was riveting. It was like really like fun, awesome stuff. But until then, it was like kind of. I mean, truthfully, I would like to get to how Ohio decided to spread Miami out and Parker Navarro absolutely picked that defense apart. I was kind of dialed into that game. I thought it was a very strong performance. We can maybe get to that later, but I will agree that in terms of competitiveness, it wasn't all of the epic thrillers that you would expect based on the point spread. But this guy on Twitter, his name is like Tomb Fornelli, I think, made the excellent point that just to bring it all back, point spreads are not how we decide these things, because the whole weekend had small point spreads and we did not get a whole bunch of close games. Even games that finished with close margins were not all that close. Clemson led by 17. Clemson led by double digits for most of the game. Credit SMU for the big comeback and being able to tie it at the end before the 55-yard field goal. But the games were not as epically close and competitive as those point spreads suggested. So do not use hypothetical point spread as a way to determine what would or would not happen on a college football field in a sport determined by the actions of asking 11, 18 to 23-year-olds to do their jobs all at the same time.
Some of them are 25 now.
What?
Some of them are 25.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. We'll get them out of the system here pretty soon.
These old ass dudes out the league.
we're gonna do the Penn State, Texas, Notre Dame conundrum here in just a little bit. In terms of the game itself, any other takeaways from Indianapolis?
Fun game. Really
Two
enjoyed
tackles for loss for Oregon.
I credit Drew Aller for some of that.
Yeah, and
he did a good job of moving. I feel
like Kotelnicki had them playing on their heels, not their toes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
100%. Two good offensive coordinators went to work tonight in Indianapolis. That's really what that was.
Watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of time to be able to nitpick on Oregon. Less time as Penn State will be headed to the first round. Again, a lot more on that here in just a little bit.